essentially what my case really was about was my interaction with this mysterious European professor named Joseph Mifsud, and what the FBI essentially caught me in is a perjury trap when I misremembered how many times and when I met this individual, but absolutely nothing
Okay.
to do with Russia.
When you were first introduced to him, was it at Link University?
Yes, when I met this person, I was introduced to him by various intermediaries who were not Russian, but in fact were connected to the US government, British government, and various intelligence agencies of the West. So there was nothing suspicious about meeting with this individual when I met with him at Link campus in Rome.
And he's the guy who told you, oh, the Russians have all kinds of information on Hillary Clinton. They have all of these things, and they're going to come out. And you told that to a Australian. Was he in the embassy, or was he a spy as well?
Basically, the situation with the Australian is very murky, and I testified under oath a year and a half ago to both John Ratcliffe, who's now the DNI, and Mark Meadows, who's now the chief of staff at the White House, about my suspicions about this Australian spying on me. He acted incredibly suspicious, bizarre. It seemed that he was recording my conversation and trying to veer the conversation into a direction that it should not have gone into, and basically on rumors that any policy advisor or person who worked in these circles, as I did for years, would basically talk about. So the thing looks to be a setup, and I know that the John Durham investigation is looking exactly into what this particular person was really up to.
So do you believe that it was a setup and the Western allies, the Western intelligence allies, were doing a solid for Obama and Clinton and themselves because they had a vested interest in getting Clinton elected? Do you believe that's what was going on?
I absolutely categorically believe that that's exactly what was going on here. We can't forget the most watched event in the world is not the World Series or the World Cup, it's the presidential election. And who is elected president not only has an impact in the United States, but globally. In 2016, the world was a completely different place than it is now, including in Europe and Australia and even Japan, where you had more leftist, aligned, globalist type of governments who clearly did not want an America First president to be elected, and they didn't want their interests to be harmed. And clearly, an America First agenda would harm particular interests abroad. You see it with NATO. You see it with Brexit or Remain group in the UK. You see it with the TPP and how ardent the Japanese and other countries wanted that to be signed and ratified. But the president clearly did not want that to be ratified. And when I would speak to these governments and have meetings, they were very hostile towards the candidate. And those countries were not Russia, they were not Iran, they were not Somalia, they were US allies that any candidate foreign policy advisor would be meeting with at the time.
All right, I want to take a quick break and then come back and finish our conversation because this is quite stunning, and we don't know our own government if true. So, George, let me just ask again here. You believe that the Western intelligence facilitated your meeting with Joseph Mifsud. So who do you think that was? FBI, CIA, MI6, Italy, all of them? Who do you think was doing this? Who was running the show?
Let's look at the facts. Last fall, John Durham and William Barr traveled to Italy to learn about Joseph Mifsud. After meeting with Italian government officials and Italian intelligence officials, a week or so later, that's exactly when the Durham probe evolved into a criminal matter. Initially, it started as an administrative review. So clearly, Italy was involved in my meeting with Joseph Mifsud. Were they the ones instructing him to meet with me and to deliver this fake information about Russia and Hillary? That's still something that the Durham investigation is looking into. But clearly, based on the types of personalities, diplomats, foreign governments that were involved, they don't run into Americans working on presidential campaigns accidentally. Clearly, they were instructed, and the FBI usually does not operate abroad. So that's exactly why I have always said that the focus really should be on Brennan.
You believe Brennan was the head of this?
I believe, based on the types of meetings, not only myself, but also General Flynn was having in London with the exact types of spies and operatives. Let's not forget that General Flynn had run into Joseph Mifsud in 2015. That's just something that Sidney Powell unearthed. And he also had met with Stefan Helper, who is now an outed informant, in 2015. So unless General Flynn and I, our fate is completely intertwined by accident, as they say in politics, nothing is a coincidence. So I clearly think that we were targeted very early on.
Do you believe it is right to classify this as a coup against the United States, our Constitution, or the president?
I absolutely believe it is, and I don't even think that's a euphemism. I think that's the correct term and the terminology that history will remember the events between 2015 and 2017 as. This was a silent coup. The way that charges were fabricated around people associated to Donald Trump to then utilize and weaponize us to flip or to sing or compose, to come up with fake stories in the narrative against the president was designed clearly to result in either his impeachment or in a fake obstruction charge. And fortunately, the president did not fall into that.
So if this was a movie, the good guys would win. This is not a movie. Do the good guys win? Do these people go to jail, and do we rat this out and move past it? Or do they just go deeper?
Over the last couple of years, I truly believe that the actions of these various high-level DOJ or intelligence officials from the U.S. and even, we'll forget the U.S. Allies abroad, let's just focus on Americans, has fed the perception that there is a two-tier justice system in this country. We do know that Andy McCabe committed a crime. That's public knowledge. We do know that Kevin Kleinsmith, the DOJ attorney, committed a crime by altering the FISA warrant that actually was resulted in obtaining the warrant. These are crimes. They were not prosecuted. That does not mean that they will not be prosecuted in the future. It'll be very interesting to see if there is a case being built around their superiors.
All right. Let me ask you one question, and we've only got about 30 seconds for an answer.
Sure.
Do you believe that Obama or Biden were involved or knew about this?
We know it public now that Obama and Biden wanted to know what was happening with the Flynn unmasking. We know that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were texting one another, that the White House wanted to know everything. I think moving forward, we will see evidence that Obama and Biden were directly involved. Yes.